Hello friends, and welcome to another mystery. Today's video, I tell the story of Zana, the wild woman of ABKHAZIA, also known as a female sasquatch. So sit back, relax, and let's get the scare over.
Wanna go insane, I'm a lonely guy. I give you my all, but it's been my fault when I get upset.
Imagine being in a remote village, surrounded by dark forests and rugged mountains, with only the moonlight to guide your way. Now, picture living in constant fear of a creature so wild, so powerful, that even the bravest men would rather avoid its path. This is the true, bone-chilling story of Zana, the captured wild woman of ABKHAZIA. A tale that goes beyond folklore, revealing the horrors of captivity, exploitation, and a mystery that haunts the Caucasus Mountains to this day. In the mid-19th century, ABKHAZIA was a region shrouded in superstition and fear. The village of Kaina, located near the Akamchar district, was surrounded by dense forests that locals knew better than to venture into after dark. These woods were said to be haunted by strange creatures, the kind that parents used to scare their children into behaving. But no story was more terrifying than the one that began in the 1850s when hunters first caught sight of something that defied explanation. A group of local hunters, led by a man named Janaba, were tracking wild game near the Makvi River. It was a foggy morning, the kind where the silence feels thick and every sound seems amplified. The men noticed something large moving through the trees, something much bigger than any human. As they watched, they saw her, a massive, hulking figure, nearly 7 feet tall, covered head to toe in thick reddish-black hair. She moved with an eerie grace, her broad shoulders and muscular build making her look like she was carved from stone. Her face was human, but different, much darker, with a wide jaw, deep-set eyes, and a thick brow that gave her an almost prehistoric appearance. The men were terrified but curious. They watched in stunned silence as she prowled through the forest, picking berries and occasionally letting out a low, rumbling growl that made their skin crawl. They had never seen anything like her. She was too wild, too animalistic to be human, yet there was something unmistakably human in her eyes. After several sightings, the villagers became obsessed with capturing the creature. Rumors spread quickly. Some said she was a forest spirit, others claimed she was a demon. But whatever she was, they wanted to capture her, to see this nightmare up close. A plan was formed, and a group of men, led by Janaba, armed themselves with nets, ropes, and dogs. The day of the capture was dark and stormy, with heavy clouds blocking out the sun. The men tracked Zana to a small cave near the river, where they set a trap using fresh meat as bait. When she emerged, they sprang into action, throwing a heavy net over her. Zana fought like a cornered animal, her screams echoing through the forest like something out of a nightmare. She clawed and bit, injuring several men with her terrifying strength. It took nearly 10 men to subdue her, chaining her hands and feet before dragging her back to the village. When they finally got her back to Kaina, she was thrown into a pit, a crude, dirt hole with wooden planks covering the top. The villagers looked down at her in a mix of fear and disgust. To them, she was nothing more than a captured beast, an object of morbid fascination. For the first few weeks, Zana was kept in the pit, chained and muzzled like a wild animal. She was fed scraps and often tormented by villagers who poked at her with sticks. The children, curious and cruel, would throw stones at her, laughing when she would growl and claw at the sides of her enclosure. She didn't speak, only grunted and howled in ways that sent chills down the spine. She seemed more animal than human, yet something about her haunted those who saw her. She was neither fully beast nor fully woman, trapped between two worlds. Over time, the villagers began to train her, forcing her to perform simple tasks like fetching water or grinding grain. Though she never learned to speak, she gradually adapted to her new life, showing a surprising level of intelligence and obedience. But she was still treated as a spectacle, moving from household to household like a living oddity. One of the most disturbing aspects of Zana's captivity was her unnatural strength. She could carry massive loads that no human could lift, and she could outrun even the fastest men in the village. She never seemed fully tamed, and there was always a flicker of defiance in her dark, haunting eyes. As the years passed, Zana's treatment took a darker turn. Some of the men in the village began to view her not just as an oddity, but as an object to be used. There were whispers that she was being violated by local men, including a particularly notorious villager named Seaman Kvit. It was during this time that Zana began to have children. Her first few pregnancies ended in tragedy. Zana, not understanding how to care for a human baby, would try to wash her newborns in the icy river water, a practice that killed them almost immediately. The villagers, realizing what was happening, intervened after the third child died. From then on, when Zana gave birth, her children were taken from her at birth and raised by other families in the village. 4 of Zana's children survived to adulthood: 2 sons, Kvit and Mikhail, and 2 daughters, Naga and Nadezhda. These children were human but carried some of their mother's unusual traits. They had darker complexions, were physically stronger than average, and had a slightly wild appearance that set them apart from other villagers. Despite their unusual heritage, they were raised among the villagers, learning the language and customs of their community. Kvit, the most notorious of Zana's children, inherited not only his mother's strength but also her temper. He was known for his violent outbursts and intimidating presence. He married twice, had children of his own, and spent much of his life battling the stigma of his origins. Mikhail, his brother, was quieter but no less formidable, working as a skilled carpenter and living a hard but respectable life. Zana's life of captivity and exploitation eventually took its toll. By the early 1890s, she had grown old and weak, no longer the terrifying figure she once was. She died quietly, likely from complications of old age and years of neglect. Her body was buried in an unmarked grave somewhere in China, lost to time and memory. The villagers moved on, but the story of Zana was never forgotten. Even after her death, Zana's presence lingered in the village, like a ghost that couldn't be laid to rest. Her children continued to live in China, carrying the burden of their mother's past. They were haunted not just by the mystery of who or what she was, but by the cruelty and horror that defined her life. Decades later, Zana's story resurfaced when Russian scientist Boris Porshnev began investigating tales of relict hominids, possible living descendants of ancient human species. Porshnev believed that Zana might be evidence of such a creature, sparking renewed interest in her life and the possibility that she was something more than just a wild woman. In the 1990s, DNA samples were taken from the remains of Kvit, Zana's son, in a bid to uncover her origins. In 2013, British geneticist Brian Sykes conducted a more thorough analysis, revealing that Kvit's DNA was fully human. However, the results showed that Zana's ancestry included sub-Saharan African lineage, a surprising discovery given her location in the Caucasus Mountains. Some researchers speculated that Zana might have been a descendant of African slaves brought to the region centuries earlier, but this theory didn't fully explain her unusual appearance or behavior. Despite the genetic evidence, many questions remain unanswered. Was Zana truly a human with a tragic past, or was she something else entirely? A relic of an ancient time, a lost link to our primitive ancestors. To this day, her true origins are debated, with some insisting she was a type of hominid long thought extinct, while others believe she was simply a woman who was tragically misunderstood and mistreated. Zana's story is a chilling reminder of how little we truly know about the world's hidden corners, and the creatures that might still roam them. Her life, marked by fear, violence, and captivity, stands as a haunting testament to the darkness that lies at the intersection of human curiosity and cruelty. Whether she was a wild woman, a primitive human, or something else altogether, Zana's tale continues to terrify and fascinate those who dare to look too closely. In the end, Zana was more than just a story. She was a living nightmare, a real-life horror that blurred the lines between human and beast. And even though she's long gone, her legacy remains, lurking in the shadows of history, waiting to remind us that some things are better left undiscovered. When you hear stories about creatures lurking in the woods, the kind that make you look over your shoulder when you're alone in the dark. And when you are, remember Zana. Because sometimes, the scariest stories aren't the ones made up. So what do you think about this story? Do you think that Zana was a female Sasquatch, or possibly just a large wild woman? Let me know your opinions down below. And until I upload another video for your entertainment, thank you for watching. And may God bless you and your families. Stay safe.